And I'm live with my good friend Amber. I believe we're at that stage yet where I can call you that. And we're going to talk about NE and SI using some information gleaned from Kersey and NLP. I'm pretty sure some typologists that I know, without naming names, and I myself believe that John Grinder, the co-founder of NLP, he fits the ISTP pattern. So, in Socionics, well, technically in Socionics, LSI is any break, but I think ISTP is any break as well. If we're defining any as, they are against the generalizations. They are against the complex equivalence. What do you mean by complex equivalence, Ben? I mean that NPs, Dario Nardi's research has shown that extroverted intuition might not be transcontextual thinking, might not be the only kind of extroverted thinking there is, but NPs, those with NE in the top function and in the auxiliary function, are the best at transcontextual thinking. So seeing the patterns, seeing the commonalities between situation A and situation B. For ISFP, that's FISE, and ISTP, TISE, they are any break. They don't see the similarities. Or their view is that by comparing those situations, you are comparing apples and oranges. You are doing an oversimplification. You are deleting information by only looking at the things that are commonalities. And Grinder's type preferences come through in NLP. So if you really want to know how an ISTP thinks, look at NLP. And so NLP is against people getting stuck in generalizations. Now, and this is where it comes in. The types that get stuck in generalizations and use generalizations but don't originate the generalizations are the SJs. So, for example, ESFJ. And in Model G, they're launched by NE. What does that look like? Somebody asked me a question recently, what does the launcher function look like in various types? And I was thinking, well, I would say the ESFJ is launched by etiquette. What are the generalized rules of social interaction? And then with those rules, they then know how to do their FE thing, their emotional expressivity. With ESTJ, they know how to... What is an ESTJ like without rules and procedures? They are at a loss. They need the rules and procedures to enforce. So they need, and they are people very much structure focused. Now, I'd also argue that another reason why SJs are structure focused is they are dynamic sensing types. They are internally dynamic and they need some kind of structure in their lives. And they want the structure and they like the structure. So, but that is how MBTI defines SI. Dario defines it as stabilizing with a predictable standard. I think, right definition, wrong function. What that is, that's your basic NE. That's the kind of what the NE is like in the SJs. Because also, now let's look at the NPs. We do all the generalizing as well, but we're usually the ones that are coming up with the generalizations. If you look at Kersey, he separates the NTs between order and organization. For the order, he has the NTs, sorry, the NTJ is doing the temporal order, and he has the NTPs doing the systems. The designers of systems usually going to, so in a, say in a management system, the person that's going to come up with the systems is probably going to be an NTP. And the people that enforce the system and like the systems are the SJs. So you can see how they work together. There's a parallel. This runs in parallel. If we look at the other side of the coin, not the coin, let's say from other quadras. So we've got Amber here, who's very much into the NI and the unconscious and the meditation and all of that. And he even has a dream catcher on the wall. Don't you remember? There it is. Extra NF points. So there. So, and these are the functions that NLP is really into, because ISTPs and ISFPs are really launched by NI. That is how they get their creativity. And I've asked Dario about this. It's very hard for them to get into that state when they can have a loop between TI and NI and FI and NI. And Dario's talked about the starburst pattern in ISFPs and ISTPs. NLP is full of stuff about the unconscious and unconscious competence and things like that. And the other part of NLP is all the stuff with extroverted sensing in terms of being, and this is how Dario defines it. And Dario really likes extroverted sensing, defining it as immersing yourself in the present context. And Dario would even write in 8 Keys to Self-Leadership that it could annoy some people if you bring in other contexts. Like the people like me who like maybe change the topic to do some comparative analysis, because the people, they want to focus on the present situation, and because they're really present and immersed in the present context, they can react so quickly to that present context. And this is why SPs are naturally suited to be the best fighter pilots, the best surgeons, anything requiring split-second thinking and responsiveness, or say in the heat of battle, a tactical awareness when the situation changes and there's the fog of war. This is where the tactical intellect is really useful, or even in when someone has to be in the moment in sport or when acting, that kind of thing. So NLP is about trying to get people to be in the moment, and then also accessing the unconscious competence. And he gives the example, and there's an example in NLP, and I'm even doing a digression now, I'm going off the topic, but it's like, gives the example of the person who drives a car. When someone first learns to drive a car, they're thinking all the while about what to do. But after they've learned how to do it, they're sort of doing it semi-unconsciously. They have the unconscious competence in that area. So if MBTI took its definition of SI, bolted it onto NE, put it as like the base level NE, then that leaves room where the MBTI, an American typology, can then import Socionics definition of SI, which is definitely a thing, which has to do with internal bodily harmony and subjective sensing. Because as Jeff tells me, the SJs will tell you about their medical problems. So they are definitely aware of the internal bodily harmony and stuff like that. So right function, right definition, wrong function. Superstructured. Anything else? What else? Any other notes I have? So yes, and so NLP will be against. So like ISTPs are really against. So let me give you an example of how about what any break looks like, especially in ISTP. In Socionica, ISTPs and ENFPs are conflictors. And I actually think Socionica has it a little bit wrong when it comes to the sensory introverts. And this is why I'm coming forth with this theory. The NE needs to be redefined a little bit. And then you'll get people, and then you'll get an ISTP in the beta quadra that fits the beta quadra and doesn't seem completely out of place. Because why should the MBTI ISTJ be in the beta quadra, and why should the MBTI ISTP be in the delta quadra? It doesn't make sense. So if we think of MBTI ISTP, they don't like generalizations. They don't like people comparing apples and oranges. So when you've got the ENFP that's doing that all the while and coming up with generalizations, the ISTP will point out and go, well, what about this? What about that? What about in this situation? What about in this circumstance? So they will nitpick at everything and say that's just a generalization. They hate to see, because, and so then with generalizations, and usually it's the NPs that will have the ability to modify the generalizations and be more sophisticated with their generalizations, their transcontextual thinking, than the SJs that can get more stuck in that stereotypical thinking, and once it has become ingrained. And so this is why SJs can appreciate some help from the NPs, with the NPs if they can clarify the generalizations for them. So for example, if the ESTJ wants a new procedure, although it's going to be difficult, you have to work very hard to persuade them to enforce a new procedure. I just received a message from Jonathan about why he can't join the Hangout. He's, let's just say, is disposed of. Not disposed of, he's not been thrown away in the bin or anything. He's just previously disposed, that's it, not disposed of. So what any break looks like. Any questions, Amber?
Yeah, what would you redefine it as in MBTI?
Oh, just that. Oh, what would I redefine SI as, or redefine NE as?
Cool.
Right. What I would do is, because in my typology that I've just thought of, because I would move the MBTI SI. Oh yes, something else. Kersey noticed this, folks. He talked about associative speech in SJs, that they go from topic to topic to topic to topic, and they will, but it's, so SJ's tangents, they do change subject, but it's always on a sensory-based concrete level. So it's tangenting like the NPs, but the NPs will usually tangent between between abstractions, whereas the SJs are tangenting between concrete things. And in fact, I can actually show people that, but I need to get the graphic out. Right, I'll just open up Dolphin. I am a KDE proud KDE user. Dolphin. What do we got here? We have Kersey. What we got here? Personology, scans. Have we got here anything here on the associative words? There we go. SI Max associative words. Right, and then I will share the screen. So you will be denied the view of Amber for the next few minutes, and I will show the screen. And of course, I need to click on my square. And so, folks, if you take that in, and I'll let Amber take it in as well. I might need to zoom in a touch, so I'll zoom in and I'll move it up when I am so instructed. There you go, Amber. I'll let you read that. Yeah, to me, I just found that funny. Who's recently born and or has died? When and of what?
This is stuff I can never remember.
Mm. So what I should call the SJs, and of course the SFJs in particular, do a lot of the Socionics SI, which is the comfort sensing stuff. But of course, as we know, folks, we really are being a little bit TI here, a little bit philosophical by like splitting experience, the human experience, into 8 functions. You know, which is a little bit much. So have you read all? I'll let you read that, Amber.
This is what you're defining it as an MBTI. This is what you want it defined as an MBTI.
Well,
what you defined it as?
Well, all I'm saying here is that Kersey has noticed this, and I'm thinking this is NE, but this is SJNE, because I absolutely take Dario's definition to heart about transcontextual thinking sideways. This is the SJ thinking sideways, but it's doing it in the SJ way. It's doing it on a concrete level. So when the SJs talk, they're tangenting. They're lateral thinking, but it's on a sensory level. It's on a concrete level.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay, and we'll bump it up a bit. There we go. And then he puts there another LOL there as well.
I haven't had enough time.
Sorry, what did you say?
I haven't had enough time to examine their stories for evidence.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, about them being cause and effect. What we got here? Right, but yeah, I mean, so SJNE, and you were asking about. I think you were asking about. Were you asking about how I would define it, or how it should be changed, or something like that?
Yeah, how would you define it? How would you change it to define it in MBTI?
Yeah, what I would do is I would tell the MBTI people, like, keep your definition of SI and sort of like bolt it onto NE, but sort of like supersize the definition of NE and have like 2 versions of NE. Like NE for when it's used by NPs, and then NE when it's used by SJs. So it's like super id NE, and then import Socionics definition of SI, which is introverted sensing about internal bodily harmony, because that's definitely a thing. And even I have this here written by Anthony Stevens.
What about their extroverted sensing?
Well, extroverted sensing.
If you wanted, would you change it that too?
Ooh, well, I mean, I am more likely to go along with the. Now, in that case, I'm more fond of the MBTI definition of extroverted sensing, because it's more in opposition to the NE, because you've got trans-contextual thinking for the NE, and then immersing yourself in the present context for SE. And that fits so well with the Kersey temperament of extroverted sensing. And that, so I would keep that and show that and say that Socionics is maybe too narrow in defining extroverted sensing as, you know, a bit of force, a bit of punch, a bit of aggression. That's too narrow. That's too biased. That's too much anti-SE bias. And although Kersey, even though he was an INTP, he did a good job trying to make SPs look good, because he was. So people are probably thinking, who was this Kersey bloke who didn't use functions? Well, he was. And what did it say on the back of the book? On the back of the first Kersey book, the authors are trainers of therapists and diagnosticians of dysfunctional behavior at California State University. So it was like he was looking at lots of, and you know about this, Amber, that you can have children fall through the cracks because the education system does not suit them.
Yeah.
And they need an education system that is hands-on, where the student can see the practical benefit of what they're learning. And if they're bored out of their minds at school, then they're not going to get the opportunities, and they'll fall into crime and things like that. And one of these days, Wojtek did once take me through all the different kinds of schooling that they have in Germany. And Amber's talked herself about in the previous hangout I did with her about her own daughter has, what is it, Montessori schooling?
Yeah.
Which is more hands-on. And here we go. Right. Oh yes. Amber has to go soon, but I will say here. So Anthony Stevens, who's in his 80s now, a Jungian author, he wrote about SI, and it sounds more like the Socionics kind of SI, because it's about the internal bodily harmony, the introverted. And so, for example, when the extroverted intuitive type, when it talks about the shadow, and there's things in Kersey, like when the Kersey will talk about like a certain type suffering from stress and things like that, and it's like that's like the SI break in ENFJ, and like there's these little things, and then here we go. So this is the description of the extroverted intuitive type, and this is the shadow. So this is introverted sensation in this little book by Anthony Stevens. So introverted sensation, the intuitive does have sensations, of course, but he is not guided by them as such. He uses them merely as starting points for his preconceptions. However, he is often completely unconscious of his sensations, and as a consequence is prone not to notice when he is tired, cold, or hungry. When his introverted sensation does become active, it can cause him to misinterpret messages arriving from his own sense organs, with the result that he may become hypochondriacal or indulge in fads about diet and exercise.
What's hypochondriacal mean?
Well, someone who's hypochondriac, I suppose. And I assume it's pronounced hypochondriac. That's about the only way I can pronounce it, folks. Hypochondriacal. Pronounce it very carefully and slowly. We have 5 viewers. Good on you, 5 viewers. Now, what else do we have? Oh yes, if we look at the NE in the SI type, the shadow in the, so that's going to be the introverted sensation type, the shadow NE, and this would be like my mother, who's ISTJ. So SI DOMs, their inferior function is extroverted intuition, which, when activated, is triggered by outer events. Such intuition tends to be essentially negative, in that when introverted sensation types use what little intuition they have, they usually pick up on what is wrong in a situation. They are forever smelling rats and detecting flies in the ointment. Often they are wrong in these hunches, but occasionally they score a bullseye, whereas extroverted intuition has a good nose for objectivity, for objectively real possibilities, this archaized intuition has an amazing flair for all the dangerous possibilities lurking in the background. This can give rise to dark prophetic fantasies about what might happen in the outer world. When people of this type break down, they tend to become paranoid. So that's interesting, because that would seem to indicate there that the conservative nature of SI DOMs, sorry, comes from the kind of shadow NE that they have. So there's different ways of looking at things. But yeah, what I would do is, in summary, I would I would import the Socionics definition of SI, which is comfort sensing, internal bodily harmony, into MBTI, and I would put the MBTI definition of SI into a sort of basic lower level NE, for want of a better phrase. Lower level NE, where it is, for the people, summing up, where higher level NE is your transcontextual thinking, seeing of the patterns, thinking across contexts. The lower level NE is the wanting to follow the generalizations, wanting the rules. A rule goes across different contexts, goes across different cases. And so the SJs are open to rules and regulations and generalizations. And they're also... They're gone.
You give different NE to the NE different types.
It's a different kind of NE because it's just like... like I said, I mean, it doesn't have to be the same in everybody. Like I said, because like human beings, I do notice this difference. It's like when I said with the SJNE, with the associative, with the way they talk, they tangent and going from topic to topic, but it's concrete topics. So it's like if a friend of theirs goes on holiday to a certain place, they're going, oh, my friend, he went there. And it's like, oh, they had this meal. Oh, I had that meal like that. Oh, it was terrible. I had indigestion afterwards. Oh, what did you... It's just like sideways, sideways, sideways. And when it's if you have a conversation with a load of NPs, again, it will just be on like a more abstract level, like maybe just like a philosophical discussion, like just topics just bouncing all over the place, but it's still that same tangenting.
Yeah.
What else was I going to say? Oh yes, you can also notice this in the kind of humor that SJs like. SJs like any humor, but only if it's a little bit any, not too much, not too strange. So for instance, Vic and Bob, we might be a little bit too surreal, but they like a little bit of surreal humor. And one of the another aspect that SJs like is they like mental imagery. So my mother likes to read a Song of Ice and Fire novels, and a lot of people complain about all the description. I think you've read them as well. Have you read and like, were you a fan of all a Song of what was it? A Song of Ice and Fire, all those Game of Thrones novels, and like.
Oh, I tried to, and I could not get into them.
Yeah, was there too much description for you?
Yeah.
Right. Now my mother loves all the description, and like if a smell is if a smell is named, she can imagine it very easily. That's very hard for me. How is that for you? Like,
I like to, well, one thing, I like to be able to imagine it on my own. I don't want somebody creating it for me.
Yeah, but it's sort of like, it's sort of like if a smell is named, it smells of this. She can instantly conjure up and remember what a certain thing smells like.
Yeah.
I just wondered how it. Yeah, but and I was amazed when she told me that. And so they do have, and so SJs do like to read. That is I think that's definitely a thing. So, for example, this is slightly related. If you look at like the top 20 political books on Amazon, look at the kinds of books there in like the top 20, and you'll get a lot of like traditionalist kind of books. And that also goes a little bit towards, again, transcontextual thinking, wanting things, and when Linda Behrens described SI with NE, when she's described like, oh, the SI is reading a lot of information, and the NE is defining the patterns. So I'm thinking, hang on a minute, it's the same thing, because you can only find the patterns if you're aware of the, like I said, you can only find the connection between A and B if you know about B. You have to know. You have to know You have to know. You have to have a wide knowledge base in order to make the connections. Although SJs are very good at specializing, I think Wojtek said his dad said he read every book on a certain subject, and Wojtek initially didn't believe him, but then he was in Poland at the time, communist Poland at the time, and Wojtek's father ESTJ. What else am I saying? Actually, not much, because Amber has to go. And I think so SJs, they like the reading, they do all the imagination. Oh yes, mental imagery. So like, if you have a rehearsal of categories and there's mental imagery, the SJs like that kind of humor, which is sort of shared with the MPs, but they don't like things that are too weird, too abstract. So, and I think Jeff Miller gave an example to me of an SJ comedian, someone like Jay Leno. So he was like a little bit conservative in his humor in terms of like a little bit of NE in there, but not too much. So not too strange. Right then, so that is about it, folks. I'm going to say goodbye now because Amber has to go. Right, so I'm just going to stop the Hangout.